Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Shauna Harrison.
And I'm Dan Pugh. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. Have you ever been in the middle of something and things were going so well, only to have something come in at the last minute with an unexpected problem causing everything to fall apart? And then you're scrambling around trying to put all the pieces back together again. Well, that is the concept of upset the apple cart. Well, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, to upset the apple cart means, quote, to cause an upset or disturbance, end quote. Now, I have to be clear here. I hate it when dictionaries use a word that's in the definition or the word that's in the actual thing that you're looking
The
up
phrase
and
or
use
whatever.
that in the definition. So, the reason that this one is in here is because it's actually under the Oxford English Dictionary as upend the apple cart, which is the more common,
Okay.
it appears on the UK side of things. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
so
think that's what I've heard is upend, but I guess I've heard both.
there's a lot of
Upset,
variants of this.
toss, yeah.
Yeah. There's
Okay.
and interestingly a note, apple cart was oftentimes used just by itself, right? You didn't have to say upset the apple cart. You could just say apple cart and people knew what you were talking about.
Okay, I love that.
And here's a reason for that, right? So this is an interesting note that the Oxford English Dictionary says that there's minimal evidence for the literal usage of the term apple cart before 1767. So it is
Okay.
likely that the phrase would have sprung up around the literal usage of a cart that hauls apples, but obviously we don't have the phrase before that, and we don't, that's in the 1750s ish. That's the first time I could find the phrase, which is, roughly really before we have much evidence for even apple carts in the first place. So
I kind of love that. It's
yeah.
like that was how somebody just said it, and people were like, "That is what it is." Like they know what the cart carrying
Right.
apples
You
is.
know you have a cart that carries apples, right?
Because generically, like everything is a whatever it's carrying cart. Like there's the beer cart.
Right. Now
There's
it's a beer
the-
cart. Well, now that same cart is an apple cart. Now that same cart is a whatever cart.
Right. That's awesome.
But yeah, so, and I'm not saying that the literal usage of apple cart came after the figurative or anything. It's just that there's not a lot of evidence for it. There's not a lot of evidence talking about it. So, I mean, the phrase sprung up from time to time. But when we're looking for evidence behind it being part of the vernacular, then the Oxford English Dictionary just doesn't have a lot to be able to go on before that time frame. But that does mean that the phrase probably doesn't predate the 1750s, or mid 1700s by much. And the other thing that I want to say is I mentioned, causing an upset or a disturbance, right? But it is important to note the phrase originally meant to harm a person or to knock them over. And that is something that we see in a definition from Francis Gross's 1788 work, A Classical Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue. Quote, apple cart, down with his apple cart, knock or throw him down, end quote.
Huh. Okay. Oh, that's really fascinating. So it started out being about like punching a guy, basically.
Yeah, knocking them over. So I actually could only find one example of this usage in print, and it's the earliest example that I could find of apple cart being used in such a way. And this is from a work called Another Fragment, and it's dated around 1750. So the document that's there doesn't actually have a date on it, so it's kind of hard to tell, but archive.org and the Oxford English Dictionary both have this particular citation as being around 1750. So I'm going to trust those works and say it's around 1750, so mid 1700s here. So the story from the unnamed editor of the work was basically the editor said that this was relayed to him by a professor at the University of Cambridge. Here's the usage. Quote, now Dunn was universally hated among the boys because he used to carry a great stick in his hand to frighten them home from their play, making them come in by daylight to go to bed or read good books, for which reason, whenever his back was turned, they would make faces at him and used to bury him, calling out, "Who, Dr. Proctor? Who, Dr. Proctor?" and so on, for which, however, whenever he catched them, He downed with their apple carts and made them smart for it. End quote. Yeah, these boys were not actually carrying apple carts. He is, he's using
Obviously.
it to say, box them among the ears or type of thing,
Almost
So,
like the apple cart was like their wherewithal or their yeah.
right, right.
Huh.
Yeah, so I mean, he literally would just beat them is the point,
It's
and
terrible,
that's
but
that's
yeah.
the other thing for made them smart for it, smart in this case. If you've ever heard the
Hurt,
phrase,
yeah.
that smarts, talking about pain, then that's the usage of smart that's being used there. But like I said, this is the only example I could find of this usage. But as we've discussed on the show before, the kind of works that survive long enough to be digitized are usually written in a style befitting what was considered by those with power as an appropriate manner. And Francis Gross captured turns and phrases that were considered inappropriate, kind of as a direct challenge to Samuel Johnson's dictionary of the same time frame. He wanted to look at things that were a little more vulgar.
Right.
But because of that, we don't have a lot of historical documentation of this phrase prior to its inclusion in Gross's work. We do, however, have contemporary works of Gross's using the phrase in the way we would use it today. So that second edition, which is the surviving, edition that we have for Francis Gross's work, is dated for 1788. And there is an example from a letter written February 10th, 1788. And this letter was written by Jeremy Belknap to Ebenezer Hazard, which were two prominent men during the time frame of the American Revolution. They wrote on all manner of subjects back and forth, but this one was referencing the ratification of the United States Constitution. Now, these letters have been heralded as an intimate look at day-to-day life during that time frame. And the quote I'm going to read mentions an S. Adams, and you may know that person as Samuel Adams.
Okay.
Quote, "How long this federal frolicking will hold, I know not. S. Adams had almost overset the apple cart by intruding an amendment of his own fabrication on the morning of the day of ratification." End quote.
Huh.
So yeah, he's using it exactly the way we would overset the apple cart is what the terminology that Mr. Belknap used in his letter, talking about this. But this was a really fascinating letter. I really enjoyed seeing Belknap's take on the Samuel Adams amendment, and Adams quickly removed that. But it did cause quite a stir and potentially cost some votes based on that. We're going to look at the entire letter, which is part of the collections of the Massachusetts Historical Society, in our behind the scenes video, which airs every Friday on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. So here is an example found in The Champion and Weekly Herald out of London, England, dated April 17th, 1837. It is from a speech delivered to a group in the opposition to the Poor Law Amendment Bill. Quote, "The Whigs, gentlemen, cannot object to the soundness of our old authorities in law, because, you know, they themselves are very fond of referring to the same source when it suits their purpose. And to deny those authorities, therefore, would be at once to upset their own apple cart." End quote.
Okay.
Yeah, so, we saw it in 1788 being used the way we use it today, and pretty much all of the examples we'll see after this are using in this way, to a point where sometimes you don't even have to say upset or upend or overset or any of that. You could just say, that's the apple cart, and people would know exactly what you were referring to here.
Right. Well, that's I think that one's kind of interesting because it's like they would like saying they would upset their own apple cart
Mm-hmm.
is, because it's like then it's not about that like a violent or act or whatever. You can tell it's definitely,
Right.
that figurative idea of just disruption.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. This next one is a humorous and I hope overblown story out of the Chronicle and Gazette and Kingston Commercial Advertiser out of Ontario, Canada. This is dated May 26th, 1841, and it is titled Making Sure. Quote, "A few days ago in Rochester, New York, an apple merchant by the name of Richard McMaster was charged with upsetting the apple cart of one Daniel Simeon, who was also a dealer in apples. The judge, after hearing the case, was exceedingly puzzled to ascertain which was most in fault. But to make sure that the guilty one should not go unwhipped of justice, he sent them both to prison. End quote. So in this case, they're upsetting the apple cart for McMaster getting into a fight with Simeone, basically. But since they're both apple dealers, the pun was ripe for the usage.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Exactly. This next one is from the 1893 work, From Who's Born and Other Stories by Robert Barr. Quote, "Well, sir, I must admit that although I have known George Stratton for years, I thought he was dished by that Cincinnati lawyer. I thought that George was just gracefully covering up his defeat, and there he upset Old Brown's apple cart in the twinkling of an eye." End quote.
Okay.
Upset Old Brown's apple cart. Yeah, so
yeah.
being attached to a person here, but obviously clearly a figurative, usage of this. This next one had me rooting for the wife in a story called Confessions of a Wife, a serialized story with the wife as a narrator. I found this published in the Daybook out of Illinois, USA, and it is dated January 7, 1916. Quote, "Yet, my dear, I am very much like other men. We welcome anything, everything, to vary the monotony of business. No matter how much we try to be straight and decent members of society, we all want to, and most of us do, kick the apple cart occasionally." "But what of us women, Dick?" I broke in. "Are our lives so much more diverse than your that we must be content with what little part of yourselves you men must give us? What is there so wonderful about kicking over the apple cart that you cannot resist it? No, don't try to speak, Dick. You would not tell me the truth. But I warn you that if in the future I too feel like kicking, I shall do so. No question of conventionality or even morality shall keep me from it." End quote.
I love that convention and morals are mentioned separately, because I think sometimes they're lumped as though they're this
As they're the
like,
same thing,
equivalent.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, moralities are oftentimes part of the conventions, but yeah, they're not
Right.
necessarily the same thing. But yeah, I loved that, that she's pushing back here. He's like, "Well, we men like to do this thing," and she's like, "What? Okay, but what
Okay.
about us?
Yeah.
Do we have so much more stuff that that we don't even have to, like, we're not gonna need to do that because we are, not running into that same kind of a rut,
Mm-hmm.
And I also love that she shuts him down. "Don't try to speak. You would not tell me the truth.
Just don't.
Just don't. Do not say a word." So, it's so good.
It's early Gwen Stefani there. Don't speak. I know what you're saying.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. George Bernard Shaw's 1928 play, The Apple Cart, is a satirical work that highlights political intrigue as multiple forces attempt to upset the apple cart, either through destroying the status quo or vigorously defending it. Britannica had this to say about the play, quote, "He produced The Apple Cart, performed in 1929, a futuristic high comedy that emphasizes Shaw's inner conflicts between his lifetime of radical politics and his essentially conservative mistrust of the common man's ability to govern himself." End quote. That is quite the dichotomy,
Yeah.
That I hate the government. I want to do these things, but I don't trust the government to cover the common man to govern themselves.
Right.
And the work the apple cart really kind of highlights a lot of that. And there have been numerous updates to this play, and a quick look at the search engine of your choice should net you a variety of updates. So you can read those if you so desire. And while I didn't include any modern versions of the play in our modern uses, you can be assured the play still gets love even today. Here's one from the Bruce Rock Corrigan Post out of Western Australia, dated June 27th, 1946. This is from an article called "Warning to Wasters of Money," and it calls out bad actors who upset the market for their own gain at the expense of the common good. Quote, "The weak link in this credit chain is the man with money to spend while goods are short. He can upset the apple cart with a vengeance by lending his spending power to the forces which would overturn a system set up for the general good. Once the apple cart is upset, that is to say, once inflation begins, it grows by its own momentum." End quote.
Okay.
Very true. Yeah, very, very true.
Mhm.
So far as we can tell, upset the apple cart as a figurative entered the language in the mid 1700s, which may have coincided with literal apple carts joining the language as well. And while the earliest uses meant to knock someone down or otherwise hurt them, it quickly took on a less sinister tone and now has long been used to identify some sort of disruption to the status quo. And with that, it is time to move to our more modern uses. But first, we need to say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls, and Fridays are our lightly edited behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by Shauna, and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
Let's kick off our modern uses with You Upset My Apple Cart, a 1952 single released by Jimmy Allen. It's a bluegrass-inspired country and western song. The song opens with the lyrics, quote, "When you upset my apple cart, I thought at first it broke my heart, because I had my heart set on you. But I've already got a plan to fix my wagon up again. I look around and find me someone true." End quote. The whole song is about this lady that broke up with him, but he's recognizing that he can fix his wagon, fix that apple cart back right up, and find someone who's not going to treat him poorly.
Well, good for him.
Yeah, I thought so. A lot of country and western songs are a little too whiny about it, you know? So I appreciated like a song like this. Miranda Lambert's another one that a lot of her stuff is very much the I will not be scorned, you know? So
Right, yeah.
like there is not
Yeah.
whiny at all. Like I like that style of music.
Mm-hmm.
This next one is from the periodical Army Logistician. This is from a speech given on 18 May 1972 by General William C. Westmoreland about material management. Here is a snippet from the article. Quote, "If your organization, section, division, or branch is not to stagnate, you must reward your innovators. Most importantly, and this is most difficult, you must give them a chance to make mistakes. Innovators will not blossom without a great deal of coaxing, and often, and I know you are aware of this, what innovators suggest will tend to upset the apple cart. When the apple cart gets in the way of our higher objectives, so much the worse for the apple cart." End quote.
Okay.
That feels very much like a United States military thing. When the apple cart is going to get in the way of our higher objectives, so much worse for the apple cart. And I'm just like, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
you're going to
yeah.
bomb it. I know. And now you take drones at it. But yeah, we get it.
Like, yeah.
Here is a clever title playing on the phrase about the company Apple. It comes from the Denver Post's online website, published April 20th, 2018. It was written by Mario Nicholas, an attorney and a Denver Post columnist who writes on law enforcement, the legal system, and public policy. And this is just the headline. Here it is, quote, "Apple attempts to upend the electronic health records cart," end quote. So I like that title because it's playing with the company name Apple and recognizes the phrase Apple Cart, but makes the cart about electronic health records instead. It's
Yeah.
the kind of headline that it makes perfect sense if you're a native English speaker, but could really cause confusion for someone who's still learning English.
Definitely.
Apple attempts to upend the electronic health records cart. yeah, I just if I was learning English, I think that phrase would not make any sense to me.
Because yeah, I think if I like if it, thinking about it from that perspective, I would be trying to figure out if there were what a health records cart was. Did it mean
Hmm.
chart? And did it,
Right? Yeah,
I would be
exactly.
kind of really going through trying to make sure like what is this thing that they're talking
Yeah,
about
what is
and
a health
not
records cart and why do we need an electronic version of it,
right
But it's
before
electronic health records
or-
is the subject.
right and before I would get to the point of like even considering that it was a yeah, that it was an idiomatic phrase. In English, though, if it's a news title, just kind of assume there's a pun involved.
Yeah. Well, Melissa King, Apple Cart by Robert Finkelson is a 2021 fiction novel. It's the second book in the Melissa King series, and here's a synopsis from the publisher. Quote, several years ago, Melissa left her small town in Massachusetts after obtaining her degree in journalism to join the Los Angeles TV network's First on the Scene news team. As a reporter, she discovered the dangerous world of investigative reporting. While investigating a series of mysterious deaths from all over the country, she stumbled upon a secret government project called Apple Cart. As she weaved her way through the investigation, against the advice of her supervisor, she placed herself and her closest friends' lives in danger. The consequences of ignoring that advice will plague her forever. End quote. Bum bum bum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I haven't read the book, so I'm trying to imagine what a secret government project that is having mysterious deaths all over the country that is called Apple Cart could be. But I imagine it's some sort of a disruptive, or probably getting rid of people who are either don't agree with the current administration or are seen as people who would be causing rebellion, and it's putting those things down.
Yeah.
But I
I
don't know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know what this
right.
pretend secret government project was.
Pretend secret government project.
Well, it's a fiction novel, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like I yeah, I've got all kinds of ideas in my head, of like some sort
Yeah.
of a like I don't know, like brainwashing people
Mm.
to do something
Oh,
sort
like
of a
you're brainwashing people to go kill other people?
yeah, yeah, kind of
Oh,
thing.
interesting.
Or that they're, doing something with soldiers returned from war, or yeah,
Yeah, because our veterans don't have enough to deal with.
right. Or they're like trying to cure cancer, but like whatever.
Oh, and they're just killing people for it?
Right. Well, no, like whatever, like the really aggressive like medical treatment they've come up with is actually killing people. Yeah. Anyway,
Wow. Your mind goes in
I should be an
so
author
many
if I
ways
could
that
just
my
keep
brain just
one
doesn't.
spot.
Yeah, you'd end up writing a book about, that has like 97 different stories all happening at the same time.
People would be confused and bored at the same time. It wouldn't go well.
Yeah, fair. Well, Don't Upset the Apple Cart is a song by Joel Dobbins off the 2023 album You Know Who You Are. It's a song about copying the lifestyles of the rich and famous despite not being rich and famous. I have no idea what this style is. It's definitely satirical, but it's almost performed as a novelty song, like a parody song. So, but it reminds me of many songs I heard growing up listening to Dr. Demento on the radio.
Mm,
So that kind of style. So
gotcha.
here's the chorus. Quote, don't upset the apple cart. Don't keep me and my next apple apart. Don't upset the apple cart. My personal debt has given me a head start. End quote.
Okay.
Yeah.
When when you were first describing it, I was thinking of the song in what is it? Is it Breakfast at Tiffany's or something where they're name dropping, but they like just use the first names, right? And so they're pretending like they know all the top and the elite.
Interesting.
And but they're just like, "Oh, well Joan said such and such whatever." And then, I don't know. But oh, right.
How interesting. Yeah, no,
That kind of like copying the rich, the lifestyles of the rich and famous thing.
I only remember one song from
It might not have been a song. It might have just been a
from
scene.
Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it was when Audrey Hepburn was singing Moon River.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
might be
sitting out
thinking
there
of
plunking
Roman
it.
Holiday. It's
Same person. Still,
yeah,
still,
right.
still Audrey Hepburn.
Definitely a Hepburn
But no
movie.
George
That's
Papard. No Hannibal from the A-Team in that
that's
one.
right. The person I'm certain of is that it was a Hepburn.
Could be Catherine, although those two were not related.
It's wild.
All right. Well, The Apple Cart is a podcast that began in January 2025 and is hosted by Gudrun Lauret. Here is the overview from Apple Podcasts. Quote, an interview show with a new guest each week. We explore creativity, marketing, business, and work-life balance, as well as a whole host of other topics. This is for you if you're a disruptive creator, a creative disruptor, or you want to do things differently in business and leave the world a better place. The shows are sometimes not safe for work, sometimes funny, but always fun, valuable, and with insightful nuggets. End quote. And she noted in her episode 0, the kind of intro that aired in January of 2025, that the name is specifically an allusion to business owners who challenge the norms with their work, which makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate Upset the Apple Cart because, as they just mentioned, it does capture the idea of challenging the status quo. It's kind of a sense of shaking things up when everything feels too settled or predictable. And I think there is something almost empowering in the notion of being able to disrupt the norm. But beyond its meaning, kind of what you opened with, Shauna, there is a vivid image that this conjures. When my brain, I see it in a cartoonish style. There's a cart brimming with apples, and it tips over, spilling fruit in all the directions, right? It's kind of a whimsical mental picture for me, but it's one that blends chaos with something new and exciting emerging from that disruption. So visually, it kind of represents both the risk and the reward of change. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, if you could pick any style of music to wake up to in the morning, what would it be? A full half of our patrons said they'd want something low and slow for a soft, steady pace to help wake up peacefully. In second place was something jazzy with some highs and lows and a wandering melody. Third was something upbeat but not too heavy, like a Sunday brunch kind of music. And in a distant fourth, almost honorable mention territory, was something fast-paced and rocking to get me started. JGP shared, quote, I tend to get woken up by my cat before my alarm can start playing anything. Supposedly, Maine Coon cats have enchantingly melodic trills, but if I'm late for his breakfast, my cat wakes me up with something a little less pleasant sounding, end quote. Those
Yeah,
are
that's fair.
really big cats too.
I was imagining that in my head. Yeah, I was like, I think that's a big poofy cat.
Yeah, they're really big. They kind of give me sometimes when they're older, a few years older, whatever, they start to have this uncanny valley kind of thing going on for me. Like their eyes look like they're staring you in your soul,
Nice.
and they're like saying what the queen said, like I'm not impressed.
Yeah, I imagine these cats as like, if like a Gandalf style wizard could turn into a cat,
Oh,
this is what they would turn
yeah,
into.
they might actually. That's what I bet they're wizards.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, that's how they hide.
Well, Heather said, quote, instead of music, I usually wake up and put on a podcast. Something about someone talking about topics I enjoy gets me up and through my routine, end quote. I feel that. I used to wake up to the BBC News every morning. These days, I don't want to hear about the news of the rest of the world. So my favorite thing, though, really to wake up to is the sounds of nature as the sun begins to peek into the windows. But I live in the suburbs, so light pollution means my blinds stay shut overnight. And I'm more likely to hear lawnmowers than birdsong. So instead, I usually like to wake up to some old school jazz like Duke Ellington or Dizzy Gillespie.
Mary said, quote, I have my Alexa set to either Diana Krall or Native American flute music. Both are great for the peaceful emergence from warm coziness. I can also go right into my yoga or stretching routine without an abrupt change or crashing my brain, end quote. I love this for Mary. Unlike most of this group, all of this peaceful, soothing, calm music is likely to send me back for another full round of sleep. My brain would be like, You have nothing to do right now. Enjoy your magical dreams. My alarm, however, is like really obnoxious. It's a cross between the Jeopardy theme and Muzak. And yeah, but because I need it to be mentally intrusive enough to make me take action.
That would be awful.
Yeah, but once I've gotten out of bed, I usually opt for something with a good beat. The genre can change daily, but classic rock's a safe bet.
Yeah, that's fair. I do, if I have to get up super early in the morning and I know like before the sun is up and my body isn't going to like it, then I do have basically my alarm will just go, Leroy Jenkins, really loud and obnoxiously.
Naturally.
So it's the sound that you're thinking of if you're familiar with it. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
that's what my alarm will do. But that's only if I have to like get up basically in the middle of the night, way early in the morning, like 4 in the
Right.
morning or something.
Yeah.
But I'm not a 4 in the morning get up person.
Fair.
I'm more of a 6:30 to 7 in the morning get up person.
If I wake up after a certain point, I just get out of bed
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
fair.
yeah. Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid, and patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember,
Words belong to their users.